Everyone in Sandspit Bay thought they knew me. Miranda Lynn Kessler, local landscape painter, the quiet woman with a gentle smile who sold watercolors at the Sunday artisan market next to the kettle corn booth. Folks nodded when they saw me at the co-op or the library. They assumed I lived a quaint life, spending mornings painting gulls and cypress trees, and evenings making casseroles for my husband. And that's exactly how I wanted it. My name is Miranda. I'm 44 years old. I live in a small coastal town in Oregon with my husband, Dean. What people don't know is that I also live a second life, one carefully hidden, one fully mine. They don't see the midnight Zoom calls with European clients, or the financial reports I read while pretending to be selecting paint swatches. They don't know I founded and built Greenbridge Consulting, one of the top logistics strategy firms for renewable energy corporations across 4 continents. Dean certainly doesn't know. To him, I'm his supportive wife who dabbles in art while he carries the real weight as the local high school's football coach. It's not that he's a bad man, it's just that he only ever saw what I allowed him to see. The truth is, I own 71% of Greenbridge. I work with solar farm developers in Morocco and wind turbine engineers in Norway. And without ever knowing it, Dean works for me. Well, not directly, but the company that sponsors all the new weight room equipment at his school, Coastal Grid Systems, they're my biggest client. And I'm the reason that contract even exists. Every month, I transfer a household stipend into our joint account from a shell company I created years ago. It's just enough to keep our modest home comfortable, the bills paid, and Dean from asking questions. He thinks I use my market money to splurge on groceries or replace the vacuum when it sputters. He once joked that art doesn't pay the bills, but it keeps you out of trouble. I laughed with him, nodded along. I've gotten very good at smiling and staying quiet. But sometimes, when I'm alone in the studio at the back of the house, surrounded by half-finished canvases and muted shades of blue, I feel that double life pressing in. It's like standing with one foot on each of 2 icebergs drifting apart. I never meant to live this way. It started as a temporary solution, keep things simple while I launched the firm. But then the company took off. Then came clients. Then came scale. And Dean? He never asked. He never wanted to know what went on past our front porch. I've asked myself, many times, if that makes me a liar. I think the answer depends on who's asking. But here's the thing, the lie kept things balanced. Until lately, I've started wondering what it would cost me to keep it going. Because secrets, even well-managed ones, always come with a debt. And sometimes, the interest builds faster than you think. It started with little jabs. Dean would come home, toss his keys on the counter, and mutter something like, "Must be nice to have all day to play with watercolors." He'd smile when he said it, but there was a sharpness under the surface, like a stone in your shoe you can't quite find. I tried to brush it off. I always did. But over time, those comments started piling up. "Maybe you should get a real job, babe," he said once when I suggested we finally replace the ancient dishwasher. I mean, those market paintings aren't exactly setting the world on fire, right? I stirred my coffee slowly, biting the inside of my cheek. It wasn't even about the money. It was the way he said it, like I was playing house while he was the one carrying the weight. The irony would have been funny if it hadn't stung so badly. One night after dinner, I brought up a job opening I'd come across, an operations role at a partner company of ours. Solid salary, excellent benefits, and completely within Dean's skill set. He'd been griping for years about feeling stuck, about the politics at school and the younger coaches getting all the credit. I thought it might be something he'd at least consider. "You want me to leave coaching?" he said, setting his fork down a little too hard. "Because some friend of yours can pull strings at some office job?" "No," I said quietly, "I just thought." "You thought you could control me," he snapped. "Jesus, Miranda. You sit around in this house all day with your little paints and now you want to run my life too?" He didn't yell, not exactly. But his voice had that coiled tension, the kind that leaves you feeling small long after the words have stopped echoing. I said nothing. I cleared the dishes, loaded the dishwasher, and took out the trash. Just like always. The next morning, I did what I usually do when I'm upset. I worked. I had a standing call with a German wind tech firm at 6 a.m., then jumped on a logistics review with our Singapore team. I barely had time to breathe, let alone dwell. That night, Dean ordered a $600 drone online and bragged about it like a teenager. He didn't notice the tired look in my eyes. He didn't ask about the back-to-back art fairs I had lined up on the calendar, or why I always seemed to be flying somewhere on weekends. I deposited the usual $4,000 into the household account, and he didn't question it. He never did. Instead, he bought new gadgets and collectibles. Little toys that made him feel like a man in control of something. We barely talked during dinner anymore. We ate side by side, fork to plate, eyes on the muted TV. I tried once to tell him about a difficult client call. I didn't use names or even real company details. Just wanted to vent, to connect. He cut me off halfway through a sentence. "You know I don't speak art world, babe," he said with a smirk. "Just tell me if you sold anything." I went quiet. He didn't notice. I started to feel like wallpaper in my own home. Seen but not looked at. Present, but not part of the picture. And it hit me, one night as I watched him fall asleep with his phone still in hand, that maybe I had built two lives not to protect the truth, but to survive the absence of it. He didn't know who I was. Not really, and he didn't want to. It was a Tuesday when my father arrived with his rickety pickup truck and a pair of old gloves. He said he wanted to help me prep the backyard for spring. Just a little weeding and pruning, he smiled. I hadn't asked, but I was grateful. He was 72 and walked with a slight limp, but the garden had always been our shared thing. I made us coffee, handed him my wide-brimmed straw hat for the sun, and we worked side by side in the dirt. Between trimming the rosemary and pulling crabgrass, we talked about nothing and everything. He didn't know about the business, not really, just that I consulted remotely for companies overseas. He never pressed. Around 4, I went inside for water. I was gone 10 minutes, maybe 12. I heard Dean's truck before I saw it. That familiar low growl of his oversized engine always preceded his mood. I walked back outside with 2 glasses in hand and froze halfway down the steps. Dean was standing in the middle of the yard, arms crossed, his shadow long across the trimmed lawn. My father was just off to the side, hands still gloved, staring at the mulch pile. "What's going on here?" Dean said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "Just cleaning up a bit," my dad replied calmly, like he didn't notice the tension rising. Dean scoffed. "Great. Another body loitering around my house." My heart dropped. "Dean," I said sharply, coming down the steps. "Don't talk to him like that." He turned toward me, face flushed. "You think I like coming home to find strange people in the yard? I work all day, and I can't even get 10 minutes of peace without someone squatting in my damn garden." My father pulled off his gloves slowly. "I was just trying to help. I didn't mean to cause a scene." Dean waved him off with a flick of the hand. "Don't worry about it, sir. Just, next time, maybe call first. Let a man know who's hanging around his house." I stepped between them. "He's not hanging around. He's my father." Dean looked at me for a long second, then turned and walked back toward the house. My father stood still, then gave me a small, weary nod. "I think I'll head out now," he said, voice tight. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "He didn't mean." "He meant it." He smiled faintly. "That's the problem." I watched his truck pull away with a knot in my throat. And when I turned back toward the house, I felt it for the first time, the line. The unmistakable fault line in my marriage. After that, Dean and I moved like strangers in the same routine. Dinners were eaten in silence. Evenings passed with him on the couch and me in my studio. We didn't fight. We didn't touch. We just coexisted. He got snappy over nothing, misplaced keys, unwashed mugs, the thermostat being 2 degrees off. I tried to keep things even. I tried not to react. But inside, I was screaming. I think that was when I finally let go of the idea that we were okay. Something had fractured, and I couldn't fix it with polite smiles or well-timed deposits. Not anymore. I had just wrapped a 2-hour strategy call with a solar tech firm in Denmark when the spinning started. Not dizziness exactly, more like the floor tilted, just a little, then didn't come back. My mouth went dry. I tried to stand, but my knees buckled. The last thing I remember was the corner of my desk rushing up to meet me. When I came to, the lights were soft and everything smelled like antiseptic. A nurse hovered above me, adjusting a monitor. My throat was sore, and my arms were tethered to wires. "You're lucky," she said gently. "You blacked out. We brought you here by ambulance." "Where is here?" I croaked. "Pacific Wellness Clinic. You're in Portland. Do you remember collapsing?" Bits of it came back, the ringing in my ears, the way my vision tunneled. I nodded slowly. "We've run some scans," she continued, "and the doctor will speak with you soon. But we caught it early. You're going to be okay." "Caught what?" My heart thudded. The door opened and a woman in scrubs walked in, clipboard in hand, face serious but kind. "Mrs. Kessler," she said, sitting at the edge of the bed. "We've diagnosed you with stage 1 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's very treatable, but treatment needs to start soon." I blinked at her. The words came in slow motion. Lymphoma. Cancer. Very treatable. But all I could think was, does Dean even know I'm here? I reached for my phone with a trembling hand and saw a string of unread messages, all from clients, from my team. Nothing from Dean. Nothing from home. I texted him once. Hey, I'm in the hospital, passed out after a call. I'm okay, but I'll be staying here a bit. We'll explain more soon. I watched the screen for a long time. No reply. The nurse adjusted my fore and whispered something soft before slipping out of the room. The sun dipped outside my window, leaving a pinkish glow across the skyline. I stared at the ceiling, feeling smaller than I had in years. By morning, still no response. Later, I finally called him. Hey, he answered flatly. You got my text? Yeah. Sorry, I've been slammed. It's playoffs. Dean, I'm in Portland. They found. He cut me off. I know. But I've got scouts flying in this weekend, and the boys are expecting me. Can't just dip out, you know? Right. Anyway, he continued, you'll be fine. You always are. Just keep me updated, I guess. Click. He hung up. I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone. Then I turned it off. That night, under the hum of hospital monitors, I opened my laptop and began drafting an internal memo. I scheduled meetings with my COO, my legal team, and our international liaisons. I reorganized the entire executive chain, set up contingency plans. I wasn't dying, but I also wasn't going to keep living like this. Dean had made his choice, loud and clear. Now it was my turn. He came on a Wednesday. I had just finished a round of chemo and was sitting up in bed, wrapped in a fleece blanket, sipping lukewarm ginger tea. My head ached, my bones buzzed. I hadn't seen Dean in person since I'd been admitted nearly 3 weeks ago. He didn't knock. Just walked in holding a manila envelope like it was a pizza menu. No flowers. No how are you? He barely looked at me. You decent? He asked, even though I was clearly in a hospital gown under 2 blankets. Hi to you too, I said, voice raspy. He sat in the chair across from me like it was a dentist's waiting room. So listen. I'd been thinking. I stared at him. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He slid the envelope onto the rolling tray next to my tea. These are the papers. Divorce. I had a guy draw them up. My breath caught. What? Look, I don't want to fight, he said quickly. This is just practical. You're not well, and things have been off for a while. Let's just make it clean. I slowly reached for the envelope but didn't open it. You're serving me divorce papers in a hospital room? I'm giving you an option, he said. You keep your paintings, the car stays with me. I get the house and joint accounts. I'm not asking for alimony. I figure, you probably won't last long anyway. He said it like he was talking about a leaking roof. I looked at him, really looked at him. His hair was slightly mussed from whatever gel he used. His coach's jacket was zipped halfway up. He looked tired, but not in the way I was tired, not the kind that lived in your blood. You probably won't last long, he'd said. I took a slow breath, then another. I folded the blanket tighter around my shoulders, more to steady my hands than for warmth. You're right, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Let's make it clean. He blinked, confused. I reached for my phone and, for the first time in weeks, typed out a number from memory. It rang once, then twice. Then, Julian speaking. I turned slightly, lowering my voice. It's time. A pause. I understand, Julian said. Expect an update by morning. I hung up, slid the phone under the blanket, and turned back to Dean. Thank you for coming, I said, forcing a smile. This was clarifying. He leaned back in his chair, satisfied. Glad we're on the same page. Always, I said softly. He stood, shoved his hands in his jacket pockets, and glanced toward the window. I'll give you space. Just let me know when you've signed. He didn't wait for a reply. When the door clicked shut behind him, I finally let my smile fall. For the first time since I got sick, I felt more alive than broken. He thought I was done, but I had just begun. Julian arrived the next morning dressed in slate gray, briefcase in hand, expression like carved stone. He said very little as he pulled a stack of papers from his bag and laid them neatly across the tray table in my hospital room. These are everything we discussed, he said. Board memos, contract termination letters, and the coastal grid report. All with your signature preloaded. I just need your authorization. I nodded slowly, then scrawled my name across each page with a trembling hand. Julian paused before packing the documents. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything, I said. He gave a small nod and left with the quiet efficiency of someone used to executing hard decisions for people in soft clothes. Except I wasn't soft anymore. Not after chemo. Not after Dean. I submitted the official termination notice to Coastal Grid Systems that afternoon. It wasn't dramatic. Just an email from a secure company account, flagged high priority, addressed to their executive team. Subject, termination of contract, Greenbridge Consulting and Coastal Grid Systems. I kept it clean, clinical. cited ethical and professional concerns. Attached a supplemental letter naming Dean Kessler specifically, citing potential conflicts of interest, internal misconduct, and a breach of ethical standards regarding client-consultant relations. It took less than 2 hours for the first call to come in. By the time I checked my voicemail, I had 6 missed calls from Coastal Grid execs. The 7th got through. "Miranda," came the voice of their COO, Jennifer Liu. This has to be a mistake. You've been our backbone. Our logistics model runs on your protocols." "It's not a mistake," I said. "Your company should reevaluate the personnel involved on your side, especially in Oregon." A pause. Then, "This is about Dean, isn't it?" "You know I can't discuss the specifics," I said evenly. "I suggest you consult your internal HR team." "Miranda, this contract was worth $12 million a year," I finished. "Yes, I know." I hung up. By Friday morning, the board at Coastal Grid convened a special session. Julian forwarded me the internal minutes. I didn't need to read them all. The highlighted section told me what I needed to know. Dean had been placed on administrative leave. By Monday, it was official. He was fired. No press release. No big headline. Just a quiet line in a personnel memo and a box of his things left at the school's front office. He didn't come to the hospital after that. Didn't call. I watched the news scroll across the school's athletic department website, now listing the assistant coach's interim lead. Dean's name had vanished, like it had never been there. The silence was delicious. I never told him I did it. Never told him I had been the woman behind the curtain the entire time. That his cushy relationship with Coastal Grid had existed because I made it so. That his entire professional identity had been held up by the invisible scaffolding of my name, my work, my power. Let him think it was politics. Or budget cuts. Or karma. Let him wonder. From my hospital bed, I deleted the shared calendar we once used for vacations we never took. I changed the locks on my business accounts. I had Julian begin the process of removing Dean from every document he'd never earned the right to be on. This wasn't revenge. This was removal. Clean. Quiet. Like he never mattered in the first place. He showed up 3 days after the termination. The knock on the hospital door was sharp, clipped. I was sitting upright, bundled in a new fleece robe Julian had sent over with a handwritten note, "Strength suits you." My hands still trembled occasionally, but I felt more clear-headed than I had in weeks. Dean walked in wearing jeans and an old-school hoodie, not the smug, polished version of himself I was used to. He looked smaller. Not physically, but like the weight of the world had finally caught up with him and started grinding him down. "I got fired," he said, no hello, no preamble. "You knew that?" I nodded once. Word travels fast. He stared at me, eyes bloodshot. "They didn't even give me a reason. Just said it was performance-related. Loss of confidence in leadership. That's what they called it." "Sounds serious." "They're lying," he said, pacing the floor now. "Someone did this to me. I had that job for 8 years. My record was clean. You know that." I tilted my head. "You think this is about your record?" He stopped, finally facing me. Something shifted in his expression. A flicker of realization. He wasn't a dumb man, just one who had been coddled too long by his own importance. "You," he said, voice low. I didn't flinch. "Me." His hands clenched at his sides. "You ruined my life." I smiled. "No. I just stopped protecting it." Silence stretched between us. You could hear the faint beep of the 4 machine and the distant hum of a hallway vacuum. "I don't even know who you are," he said finally. "No," I said. "You don't. But you're about to." I reached for the folder on my bedside table and pulled out a copy of my company's corporate charter. I tossed it into his lap. He opened it slowly, flipping through the pages, and then his eyes caught on something that made his face blanch. "You're the founder?" he asked. "The majority owner, founder, and principal advisor." He looked stunned. You're behind Greenbridge?" I nodded. "And the Coastal Grid account? Began because of me. Continued because I let it." Dean sat down heavily in the chair across from me, the folder still in his lap. "You ran that company this whole time?" he whispered. "Yes. And you let me think that I was just a painter who liked wildflowers and watercolor clouds?" I smiled faintly. "Yes." He sat in stunned silence. Then, as if waking from a dream, he stood suddenly. "What is this? Some kind of punishment? You trying to embarrass me?" "No," I said. "This is clarity." I handed him another envelope, this one thinner, legal-sized. He opened it slowly, eyes darting down the page. "Divorce terms. You have 30 days to vacate the house," I said calmly. "I've arranged alternative accommodations through my firm's private real estate manager. Your vehicle is yours. The joint account is being closed today." His mouth opened, but no sound came out. And before you ask, I added, yes, I have proof of your affair with the assistant coach. I have the texts, the hotel receipts, and the burner phone in the garage. He swallowed hard. You don't get to be the victim here, Dean. You get to leave. He stood there, frozen, hands gripping the folder like it might fall apart if he let go. I didn't wait for a response. I just reached for my tea and took a sip. Close the door on your way out, I said. He did. The first call came just after midnight. I let it ring out. The second buzzed at 12:06 a.m., then again at 12:10. By the fourth, I switched the phone to silent and slid it under my pillow. But part of me knew he wouldn't stop until he got what he wanted. He finally got through around 12:30, not because I answered, but because the hospital room phone rang. I didn't even know anyone had that number. When I picked up, his voice was already cracking. Miranda, please don't hang up. I said nothing, just listened. I've made mistakes, he choked. God, I screwed everything up. I didn't know what I was doing. I was angry, confused. I thought you were just trying to control me. I didn't know you were sick. Still, I said nothing. I miss you. I miss us. My grip tightened around the receiver. I stared out the window at the empty parking lot and the dark silhouettes of trees swaying beneath the floodlights. There was a peace in that stillness, in the silence of not having to explain myself. He kept talking. You were right about everything. I took advantage. I thought you were just lucky, you know? I thought I was the one doing all the work. But you, Jesus, Miranda, you were the one holding everything together. I let the silence stretch, long enough for him to start crying. I've been staying at that motel off Route 12, he said quietly. I lost everything. I even called Coastal Grid to try and talk to someone, to get some kind of explanation. But they won't even take my calls now. I almost laughed. The irony that the man who used to silence me with smirks and dismissals was now begging for my voice on the other end of a corded hospital phone. Then he whispered it. There's something else I need to tell you. His voice dropped to a low, trembling hush. I was seeing someone, the assistant. You probably already knew that. But it wasn't serious, I swear. It was stupid. It was just, I don't know. I was lost. I closed my eyes. I had already seen the screenshots. I had already had Julian track the burner phone and confirm the travel records. There were 5 hotel stays, spread across 8 months. None of it was an accident. I ended it, he said. I swear to God, I ended it. You're the only one I ever really. I cut in, my voice calm and sharp as a razor. You had years to value me. You chose pride and comfort instead. Miranda, I was wrong. Let me fix this. Let me. No, I said. He froze. I could hear the soft static of the line. You don't get to cry and beg now. You don't get to make a mess and come running once the walls come down. Please, he whispered. I've given you enough, I said. Time, money, a life you never earned. And when I needed you most, you gave me silence. I pulled the phone slightly away, gave myself one last moment to breathe in the power of finality. Goodbye, Dean. Then I hung up. The next morning, Julian filed a civil suit on my behalf, infidelity damages. Oregon was a no-fault divorce state, but we had a workaround, misuse of joint funds. The evidence folder included time-stamped photos, GPS data, and every message he thought he could hide. That afternoon, Dean was served in the motel parking lot by a plainclothes process server. He called again. Blocked. He messaged. Blocked. By sundown, there was no more voice, no more pleading. Just the quiet sound of consequences arriving right on time. Dean was evicted the same week the lawsuit was served. I didn't have to see it happen. Julian sent me the public notice filings. The motel had been billing him weekly, and when his card declined for the 3rd time, they packed his things into trash bags and left them at the curb. The last photo Julian forwarded was a grainy parking lot shot of Dean crouched beside a duffel bag, head in hands, next to a busted suitcase that wouldn't zip. He took a job at a freight depot down in Coos Bay. Night shifts. Manual labor. The same kind of job he once mocked when we passed warehouses on the highway. Heavy liftings for people who stopped trying, he used to say. You work with your back when your brain can't get you anywhere. Now he worked with his back. His affair partner, the assistant coach, disappeared 2 weeks after the suit was filed. Her father paid a quiet settlement through his attorney. No fanfare. Just a wire transfer and a short statement denying knowledge of the relationship. The town got quiet around Dean after that. The whispers started in locker rooms and booster meetings. Parents who once praised his old-school coaching style now muttered about inappropriate behavior and financial stuff. Local business owners stopped responding to his calls for donations. He became a ghost, not just unemployed, but unofficially blacklisted. He tried filing a countersuit for emotional distress. It didn't make it past Julian's desk. By the end of the month, Dean had no house, no steady income, and no allies. The accounts he used to access, the ones I funded and monitored, were gone. The bank froze the joint card after I submitted the divorce documents. He sent one last message to my old art email, the only one he still had access to. A single sentence. "You didn't have to destroy me." I didn't reply. I forwarded it to Julian, then blocked the account. I finalized the divorce a week later. No mediation, no in-person appearances. Just a sealed envelope with my signature and a clerk's stamp. Dean had 30 days to contest. He didn't. I never saw him again. No dramatic confrontation. No last-minute apology. Just a man stripped bare by his own indifference, left with nothing but a memory of the power he once held. And I didn't look back. The hospital discharged me with a clean bill of progress. My scans were holding. My body was healing. But more than that, something deeper had mended, something that had nothing to do with medicine. Dean was gone. And for the first time in years, my house, my life, and my name belonged to me again. There was no celebration. No champagne or fireworks. Just a quiet, steady peace. The kind you don't notice until it replaces the noise you forgot you were living in. Ashes don't scream. They settle. And so did I. 6 months after the final papers were signed, I moved into a villa tucked just off the Oregon coast, a modest home, nothing extravagant. 1-story, cedar shingled, with wide windows that faced the sea and a wraparound porch where I could hear the wind thread itself through pine trees. The neighbors were far enough to wave at, but not close enough to make small talk. It was perfect. I didn't bring much from the old house. Just a few canvases, my brushes, some books, and a black leather journal I'd started keeping in the hospital. Everything else, the matching dishware, the couch he picked out, the kitchen gadgets we never used, I donated or left behind. Let someone else make memories with them. I hired a new COO for Greenbridge. A brilliant woman named Candace from Colorado who wore hiking boots to board meetings and never tried to prove she was the smartest person in the room. I gave her full control over daily operations and stepped back from the grind. I still checked in once a week, old habits die hard, but I was no longer the engine running everything. That freedom felt strange at first, like walking around without armor. But the more I leaned into it, the lighter I felt. The last round of chemo came and went. I rang the bell at the clinic without fanfare. Just me and the nurse who'd held my hand that first week. We didn't cry. We didn't hug. We smiled. My final scan came back clean. No signs of activity. My oncologist said the words slowly, like she wanted to give them weight. "You're cancer-free." I whispered it to myself on the drive home, again and again, until it started to sound like my name. People tried to set me up, well-meaning clients, old colleagues, even Candace once jokingly mentioned a widowed executive she thought I'd like. I smiled, said thank you, and always changed the subject. I wasn't lonely. I wasn't broken. I was just full. There was a small sunroom at the back of the villa. I turned it into a studio. No Wi-Fi. Just easels, open windows, and whatever I felt like painting that day. Sometimes I didn't even paint. Sometimes I just watched the light move across the floor. One evening, Julian came to visit. He brought his dog, a scrappy mutt named Benson who immediately claimed the porch like he'd been raised there. We sat outside as the sky turned lavender, nursing mugs of black coffee and sharing silence the way old friends do. He glanced at me after a while and said, "You did it, you know." "Did what?" "Got out. Whole. Alive." I nodded. "And I'm staying out." We didn't talk about Dean. We didn't need to. That chapter was over. Ashes buried, silence honored. Julian left just after dark. Benson whined when he climbed into the car. I waved as they drove off, then walked back inside, barefoot, the floor cool beneath me. I stood in the middle of my studio and turned in a slow circle. The walls didn't echo. The house didn't hum with someone else's presence. I was alone. And finally, completely, at peace.